Hello and welcome to The Essential Reads. My name is Isaac, and my goal is to bring to you a bunch of classic audiobooks in an easy and accessible way. We are continuing with Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoyevsky, and this is Part 4, Chapter 1. Let's begin. Can this really still be my dream? Raskolnikov wondered again. Cautiously, and with suspicion, he peered closely at his unexpected guest. Svidrigailov! Rubbish, I don't believe it, he finally said out loud in a puzzled voice. His guest seemed to find this exclamation not at all astonishing. I've looked in to see you on account of two reasons. For one thing, I felt like making your personal acquaintance, as I've long been hearing things about you that put you in a curious and favourable light. And for another, I cherish the fond hope that you may not refuse to assist me in a certain undertaking that directly affects your sister, Avdotya Romanovna. Alone, and without introduction, she would probably not admit me in her chambers just now, because of prejudice. But, well, now, with your assistance, I expect to... You expect too much, Raskolnikov said, interrupting. They only arrived in town yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Raskolnikov made no reply. It was yesterday, I know. Why, I myself arrived only the day before. Well now, Rodion Romanovich, sir, this is what I want to say to you on that account. While I consider it superfluous to embark upon self-justifications, I should be grateful if you would tell me what was so particularly criminal about my part in that matter, viewing it without prejudice, that is, and from a common-sense point of view. Raskolnikov continued to study him in silence. The fact that I went chasing after a defenseless young girl in my own home and outraged her honor with my infamous proposals? Is that it, sir? Thus I do anticipate your reply. I mean to say, if you will only bear in mind that I am a human being. Et nihil humanum. In a word, that I am capable of being attracted and falling in love. Something which, needless to say, takes place without deference to our wishes. Then everything may be explained in the most natural fashion. The point at issue here is as follows. Am I a monster, or am I myself a victim? What if the latter be true? I mean, in suggesting to the object of my desires that she elope to America or Switzerland with me, I may have entertained the most respectful feelings towards her, and may even have inclined to usher in our future happiness. Reason is, after all, the servant of passion. I may have been harming myself even more, for heaven's sake. That's not what's at issue at all, Raskolnikov interrupted with disgust. The simple fact is that, quite apart from the question of whether you're right or wrong, you're an obnoxious character. Well, and so people don't want to have anything to do with you. They show you the door and out you go. Svidrigailov suddenly roared with laughter. I say! There is no putting you off the mark, is there? He said, laughing in the frankest possible manner. I thought I could pull the wool over your eyes, but no, you've gone straight to the heart of it all. You're still trying to pull the wool over my eyes at this very moment. What if I am? Svidrigailov replied, with a gaping laugh. I mean, it's what they call bonne guerre, and it's the most permissible form of wool-pulling there is. But you interrupted me just now, you know, and one way or another I shall say it again. There would have been no unpleasantness if it hadn't been for the incident in the garden. Marfa Petrovna. Did you wear her out as well, the way they say you did? Raskolnikov interrupted rudely. No, you've heard about that too, have you? No, you couldn't really have failed to, I suppose. Well, with regard to your question, I must admit that I don't know what to say, though my own conscience is perfectly clear on the matter. What I mean is, please don't get the idea that I had any misgivings about it. It all took place quite in accordance with the natural order of events, and precisely in the manner common to such cases. The medical inquiry established apoplexy as the cause of death, brought on by bathing immediately after a large meal, accompanied by nearly a whole bottle of wine. And there is no way in which it could have possibly discovered anything else. You know, sir, for a while I thought about it, particularly as I sat in the train on my way here, wondering whether I might not have helped to bring about this whole misfortune. Oh, by causing her some inner upset or something of that sort. But I have come to the conclusion that of that too, there can have been absolutely no question. Raskolnikov began to laugh. I wonder you let it bother you. Now what are you laughing at? Look at it like this. I only hit her with that little horsewhip twice. There weren't even any marks. Please don't think me a cynic. I mean, I have precise awareness of just what an infamous thing it was to do, and so on and so forth. But you see, I also know for a fact that Marfa Petrovna actually derived pleasure from my, as it were, enthusiasm. The story of the episode concerning your sister had been squeezed of its last dregs of interest. It was the third day running that Marfa Petrovna had been compelled to stay at home. She had no pretext for showing her nose in town, and she bored everyone to death with that last letter of hers. You've heard about the letter reading, I expect. And suddenly these two smacks of a horsewhip land on her out of the blue. She ordered that carriage like a shot. And all this quite apart from the fact that there are certain occasions when women take an inordinate degree of enjoyment in being trampled on, all their surface indignation to the contrary. They all have them, those occasions. And indeed, human beings in general are fond, even inordinately fond of being trampled on. Have you noticed that? But of women it is especially true. One even might say they can't get along without it. At one particular time, Raskolnikov thought of getting up and leaving, thereby terminating the interview. But a certain curiosity, not unmixed with circumspection, held him back for a moment. So you like a good fight, do you? He asked absent-mindedly. No, not terribly, Svidrigailov replied, unruffled. But Marfa Petrovna and I hardly ever came to blows. We lived in harmony most of the time, and she never seemed to grumble at me. As for the horsewhip, I think that during the whole of our 7 years together, I used it on her only twice. That's if one doesn't count a certain third occasion, which was, I may add, highly ambiguous to say the least. The first time was 2 months after our marriage, just after we arrived at the estate. And the second time is the one there's just been. What do you think? That I was a monster, a reactionary, a feudalist? He. By the way, Rodion Romanovich, I wonder if you remember how a few years ago, when we were still in the era of beneficent glasnost, a certain member of our gentry, I've forgotten his name, was publicly disgraced in all the organs of the press for having horsewhipped a German woman in a train. Remember? I believe it was in the year of the indecent act of the age. Oh, you remember. The reading from Egyptian Nights, the public one. The black eyes, and "O where art thou, golden springtime of our youth?" Well, sir, if you want my opinion, I am deeply out of sympathy with the gentleman who horsewhipped the German woman, because, really, there's not much to sympathize with, is there? But at the same time, I can't help adding that one occasionally encounters German women of such an inflammatory nature that I doubt if there is a single progressive who would not be able to entirely answer for himself. No one saw the matter from that point of view at the time. Yet it's the only genuinely humane one, I do assure you, sir. Having delivered himself from this remark, Svidrigailov once again went off into roars of laughter. It was evident to Raskolnikov that this was a man who had firmly made up his mind to do something, and who had all his wits about him. It sounds as though it must be several days since you spoke to anyone, he said. Just about. Why, are you surprised that I'm such an adaptable man? No. What surprises me is that you're too much of one. Because I didn't take offense at the rudeness of your questions? Is that what you mean? Yes, well, why take offense? As I was asked, so did I reply. he added with an astonishingly ingenuous look. After all, to be quite honest with you, there's practically nothing that interests me. He went on reflectively, particularly just now. I've nothing on my hands. Actually, you're quite entitled to suppose that I'm sucking up to you with some ulterior motive. All the more since I have some business with your sister, as I told you. But I'll tell you quite frankly, I've been bored stiff. Particularly these last days. So I'm actually rather glad to see you. Don't be angry, Rodion Romanovich, but for some reason you seem terribly strange to me. Say what you like, but there's something funny about you. And particularly now. That's to say, not precisely at this very moment, but now in general. There, it's all right. I won't. Don't be dismayed. After all, I'm not such a bore as you think. Raskolnikov gave him a gloomy look. Actually, I think you're probably very far from being a bore, he said. I even think that you may be a man of very good society. Or that at any rate you can on occasion behave like a decent human being. Oh, I'm not really interested in what anyone thinks of me, Svidrigailov replied coldly, and even with a touch of superciliousness. And so why shouldn't I go around like a vulgar parvenu when those clothes fit so comfortably in our climate, and particularly if one has a natural inclination in that way, he added, starting to laugh again. I've heard you have a lot of acquaintances here, though. I mean, you're what's known as not without connections. So it stands to reason you wouldn't be coming to see me unless you had ulterior motives. What you say is true. I do indeed have acquaintances. Following on without replying to the main thrust of the question. I've started running into them already. After all, this is the third day I've been loitering about. Either I recognize them, or they apparently recognize me. Oh, it's perfectly true, I'm dressed quite well, and not thought poor. The peasant reforms didn't affect us, you see. The place is just woods and water meadows, so the money keeps on coming in. But I shan't go call on them. I was sick of their company even in the old days. This is the third day I've been at large, and I haven't declared myself to anyone. My, what a town this is. I mean, who on earth ever dreamt it up? A town of red tapists and seminarists of every description. You know, I must say, there are a lot of things I never noticed in the old days. 80 years or so ago, when I used to hang around here. And I tell you quite frankly, I put all my faith in anatomy now. What sort of anatomy might that be? It is for those clubs, those evenings at Dussett's, those outdoor fetes at the Point, or even, dare I say it, that progress of theirs. Well, they don't need yours truly for any of that. He went on, again ignoring the question. What's so wonderful about being a card shaper anyway? So you've been a card shaper too, have you? How could I have failed to be? There was a whole set of us. A most respectable bunch we were, 8 or so years ago. We used to pass all our time together. And you know, we all had excellent manners. We were poets, capitalists. In fact, as a general rule in Russian society, the best manners are found among those who've been horsewhipped. Have you noticed that? Oh, nowadays I think I've lost the knack down there in the country. But even so, I did go to prison for debt one time. Some trouble with a filthy Greek from Luzhin. At that point, Marfa Petrovna turned up. She did some haggling, and bought me out for 30,000 silver rubles. I owed 70,000 altogether. We were united in lawful wedlock, and she carried me straight off to her country estate as though I were some treasure trove. I mean, she was 5 years older than me, you know. Very fond of me, she was. For 7 years, I never left the place. And please observe, she had a document she was going to keep for the rest of her life, signed in someone else's name, which said I was beholden to the tune of those 30,000 rubles. So if I'd once taken it into my head to rebel, she'd have banged the lid shut on me like that. No, she'd have done it. In women, all those things coexist together, you know. And if she hadn't had the document, you'd have taken to your heels? I don't know what to say to you. That document troubled me hardly at all. I didn't feel like going anywhere. And on a couple of occasions, Marfa Petrovna even invited me to go abroad with her, when she saw I was bored. But, well, I'd been abroad before, and the place always made me feel sick. I don't know why it is, but the dawn arrives, there's the Bay of Nepalese, the sea. One looks at it and feels somehow sad. What makes it even worse is that one really does have something to feel sad about. No, it's better in Russia. Here, at least, one can blame other people for everything, and find excuses for oneself. I may go on an expedition to the North Pole now, as j'ai le vin mauvais, and loathe drinking. Yet drink's about all there is left. I've tried the lot. I say, is it true that Berg is to make an ascent in a giant balloon in Yusupov Park this Sunday, and that he's willing to take passengers with him for a fee? Don't tell me you want to go up with him. Me? No. Yes. Svidrigailov murmured, as though he were really pondering something. What on earth's gotten into him? Raskolnikov wondered. No, the document didn't trouble me. Svidrigailov went on ruminatively. It was I who didn't want to leave the estate. It's almost a year now since Marfa Petrovna returned the document to me on my name day, together with a remarkably generous sum which she said was a present. All the capital was hers, you know. See how I trust you, Arkady Ivanovich, she said. I do assure you, she actually used those words. You don't believe it, do you? I mean, you'd become a respectable master on that estate, you know. They know me in the neighborhood. I used to order books, too. At first, Marfa Petrovna approved of that. But later, she kept worrying that I'd study too hard. Am I right in thinking that you miss Marfa Petrovna quite a lot? Me? Yes, quite possibly. By the way, do you believe in ghosts? What sort of ghosts? Oh, just ordinary ones. That sort. Do you? Well, perhaps not. Pour vous plaire. I'm not so sure, though. Do you see them, then? Svidrigailov gave him a rather strange look. Marfa Petrovna considers it expedient to visit me, he said, contorting his mouth into a strange smile. What do you mean? Well, she's been to see me 3 times now. The first time I saw her was on the very day of her funeral, an hour after we'd put her in the ground. That was the day before my departure for St. Petersburg. The second time was the day before yesterday, as I was sitting in the train at Malaya Vishera station. And the third time was 2 hours ago, in my room at the apartment where I'm staying. I was alone. Was this when you were awake? Absolutely. I was awake on all 3 occasions. She comes in, speaks for a moment, and then walks out of the door. It's always the door. I even seem to hear it. How did I know that something of that kind was happening to you? Raskolnikov said suddenly, at the same time taken aback at having said this. He was in a violent state of agitation. Good Lord! You knew, did you? Svidrigailov said in astonishment. Did you really? Well, didn't I say we had certain points in common, eh? You certainly did not. Raskolnikov replied sharply, losing his self-control. I didn't? No. It's funny, I thought I did. Just now, when I came in and saw you lying there with your eyes closed, pretending, I instantly said to myself, that's the fellow. What did you say? What are you getting at? Raskolnikov shouted. Getting at? I don't know what I'm getting at. Svidrigailov murmured candidly, as though he himself was somewhat confused. For a moment, they said nothing. They both stared at each other. It's a lot of nonsense, Raskolnikov exclaimed angrily. What does she say when she visits you? Her? Would you believe it? It's always the pettiest, most trivial things. Things that really make you wonder. I mean, that's just what it is. I mean, that's just what I find so annoying. The first time she came in, you know how it is, I was tired. There'd been the funeral service, with the prayers for the repose of her soul, followed by Letia, and then the funeral meal. Well, at last I was alone in my study. I'd lit a cigar. Had started to brood about things. She walked in at the door. "Oh, Arkady Ivanovich," she said. "With all this fuss, you've forgotten to wind up the dining room clock." And you know, I really had wound up that clock every week for the past 7 years. And if I ever forgot, she'd always be sure to remind me. But the following day, I was on my way here. At dawn, I got out of the station. I'd been dozing overnight. I was shattered, all bleary-eyed, and had some coffee. I looked, and Marfa Petrovna suddenly sat down beside me. She had a pack of cards in her hand. "Wouldn't you like me to tell your fortune for the journey, Arkady Ivanovich?" she said. And you know, she was very skilled at telling fortunes. Oh, I'll never forgive myself for not having let her. I got scared and ran away. And in any case, the bell was ringing for the train to leave. Then today, after I was hitting with a heavy stomach after the most wretched meal I ordered from a cook shop, I was having a cigarette. Marfa Petrovna suddenly came in, all dressed up in a new green silk dress with the very longest of trains. "Hello, Arkady Ivanovich," she said. "What do you think of my dress?" Aniska could never have made something like this. Aniska's a seamstress on our estate. One of our former serf girls who went to train in Moscow. Rather a pretty girl, actually. There she stood, turning this way and that in front of me. I inspected the dress, and then looked her closely in the eye, and said, "I wonder you come to bother me with such trivial matters, Marfa Petrovna." "Oh, good heavens, dear, you're well beyond my reach now," she replied. Well, just to tease her, I said to her, "You know, Marfa Petrovna, I think I'm going to get married again." "That's just what I'd expect of you, Arkady Ivanovich. But it won't look very good if you go and take another wife no sooner than you've buried your previous one. And even if you make a good choice, I can tell you now it won't provide either you or her with much amusement, but only the public at large." At that point she went out, and I swear I heard her train rustle. I mean, what sort of nonsense was that, eh? "What if you're still lying?" was Raskolnikov's response to this. "I seldom lie," Svidrigailov replied meditatively, seeming not to notice the question's rudeness. "And previously, before this, I mean, you never saw any ghosts?" Yes, I did. Only once in my life, 6 years ago. I used to have a menservant called Filka. We'd only just buried him. And one day I shouted, forgetting he was dead, 'Filka, my pipe!' He went in and went straight over to the cabinet where I keep my pipes. I sat there thinking this is him taking his revenge. Because just before his death we had a terrible quarrel. 'How dare you come in here with your elbow in tatters like that? Be off with you, good for nothing!' He turned, went out, and didn't come back. I said nothing to Marfa Petrovna about it at the time. I'd been going to have a requiem sung for him, but was too ashamed of myself. You ought to see a doctor. Oh, I don't need you to tell me I'm ill. Though I must say I honestly can't imagine what it can be. I should think I'm about 5 times healthier than you are. I didn't ask you whether you believe that ghosts are seen by people. I asked you whether you believe there are such things as ghosts. No, I most certainly do not, Raskolnikov exclaimed, with more than a touch of aggressiveness. I mean, what do people usually say? Svidrigailov murmured, as though to himself, looking to one side and inclining his head slightly. They say, you're ill, so the things you see are just non-existent hallucinations. But that's woolly thinking, you know. I agree that ghosts are only seen by people who are ill. But, I mean, that only proves that ghosts can only be perceived by people who are ill. Not that they don't exist. It proves nothing of the kind, Raskolnikov insisted irritably. Oh, that's your opinion, is it? Svidrigailov went on, giving him a long, slow look. Well, but what if one were to put the argument this way? Come along now, give me a hint. Ghosts are, so to speak, shreds and fragments of other worlds, their source and origin. Of course, the man who is healthy doesn't need to see them, because the healthy man is the most earthly sort of person, and so is bound, for the sake of gaining an all-round and orderly view of things, to live exclusively the life of this world. Well, but he has only to fall ill, or to suffer a disruption of the normal earthly order of things within his organism, and the possibility of there being another world begins to exert its influence. The iller he gets, the more numerous are his contacts with the other world. The result being that, when he finally dies, he goes straight there. I've been thinking about this for a long time. If you believe in life to come, you ought to be able to believe in that argument too. I don't believe in a life to come, Raskolnikov said. Svidrigailov sat looking pensive. And what if there's nothing there except spiders or something of that kind? He said suddenly. This is a madman, Raskolnikov thought. You see, we always think of eternity as an idea that can't be comprehended, of something enormous, gigantic. But why does it have to be so large? I mean, instead of thinking of it that way, try supposing that all there will be is one little room, something akin to a country bathhouse, with soot on the walls and spiders in every corner. And there is your eternity for you. You know, I sometimes see it that way. Can you really not imagine anything more just and consoling than that? Raskolnikov exclaimed with a feeling of pain. Just. And you know, if I'd been given the job, I'd most certainly have designed things that way. Raskolnikov was suddenly gripped by a kind of chill at this outrageous reply. Svidrigailov lifted his head, gave him a fixed look, and suddenly roared with laughter. But don't you see? He began to shout. Only half an hour ago we hadn't yet clapped eyes on each other. We thought we were enemies, with some unfinished business to settle. But here we are. We've chucked the business out of the window and gotten ourselves into all this literary stuff. Well, I was speaking the truth, wasn't I? When I said we were birds of a feather. Look, do me a favor, Raskolnikov said irritably. Please spare me the explanations and tell me why you've honored me with this visit, and... well, I'm in a hurry. I've no time, I want to go out. Why, certainly. Your sister, Avdotya Romanovna, is to marry Mr. Luzhin, Fyodor Petrovich, isn't she? Will you kindly not talk about my sister, and refrain from mentioning her name? I quite honestly don't know how you can dare to utter it in my presence, if you really are Svidrigailov. But I mean, it's about her that I've come to talk to you. How can I avoid mentioning her name? Very well, speak, but make it quick. I'm certain that by now you will have formed your own opinion of this Mr. Luzhin, who is a cousin of mine on my wife's side of the family. If you've so much as spent half an hour with him, or even just heard a few of the hard and unquestionable facts about him. He's not a suitable match for Avdotya Romanovna. In the way I view this matter, Avdotya Romanovna is sacrificing herself in an utterly magnanimous and reckless fashion for the sake of her family. It struck me, after all I've heard about you, that you, too, might be glad if this marriage could be stopped from going ahead without your interest being harmed. Indeed, now that I've made your personal acquaintance, I feel positively confident of it. You know, you're being very innocent about all this. I'm sorry, I nearly said insolent, Raskolnikov said. In other words, you mean I'm worried about my own pocket. Have no fear, Rodion Romanovich. If it was my own best interests I was worried about, I wouldn't be bringing all this out in the open with you so directly. I'm not a complete fool, after all. On that score, allow me to reveal to you a certain psychological curiosity of mine. While justifying my love for Avdotya Romanovna to you a few moments ago, I said I myself was a victim. You may as well know that I don't feel any love at all. None whatsoever. And that it actually seems strange to me now. As I mean, I really did have certain feelings. Caused by idleness and lechery, Raskolnikov interrupted. Yes, it's true. I'm a lecherous and idle man. But actually, your sister possesses so many virtues that not even I could help succumbing to a certain influence. But that was all nonsense, as I now myself realize. Have you realized it long? It's been with me for some time, the realization. But I finally made my mind up the day before yesterday, almost at the very moment I arrived in St. Petersburg. Though, even when I was in Moscow, I still thought I was making my journey with the object of winning the hand of Avdotya Romanovna, and saw Mr. Luzhin as my rival. Look, excuse me for interrupting you, but you'd really be doing me a favor if you'd cut the detail and get to the point about the purpose of your visit. I'm in a hurry. I must go out. With the greatest of pleasure. Since I'm now in town and have decided to undertake a certain voyage, I'm anxious to make a few essential arrangements in advance of my departure. My children have stayed behind with an aunt of theirs. They are not short of money. And I myself am not necessary to them. What kind of father am I, in any case? For myself, I have taken only what Marfa Petrovna gave me a year ago. That is sufficient for me. Please bear with me. I shall come to the point right away. Before my voyage, which may very well take place, I want to have done with Mr. Luzhin. It's not that I find him so very unendurable, but rather that he was the cause of my quarrel with Marfa Petrovna when I discovered she cooked up this marriage. What I want to do is meet with Avdotya Romanovna, through your good agencies, and even possibly in your presence, and explain to her that, in the first place, not only will she fail to obtain from Mr. Luzhin the slightest advantage, she will most certainly suffer manifest harm. Then, after I have asked her forgiveness for these recent disagreeable happenings, I should like to request her permission to offer her 10,000 rubles, and thereby lessen the inconvenience of her break with Mr. Luzhin. A break to which I am convinced she would not be averse, were but the opportunity to present itself. But you really are mad! Raskolnikov exclaimed, less in anger than surprise. How dare you talk like that? I knew you'd hit the ceiling. But the first point to note here is that even though I'm not a wealthy man, I do have that 10,000 to spare. I mean, it's quite superfluous to me. If Avdotya Romanovna won't accept it, I shall probably put it to some even more stupid use. That's point number one. Point number two is that my conscience is completely at rest. I make this offer without calculation of any kind. You may believe it or not, as you choose. All I can tell you is that sooner or later, both you and Avdotya Romanovna will realize that it is so. The fact of the matter is that I did really cause your greatly respected sister a certain amount of trouble and unpleasantness. And thus, in the throes of sincere repentance, I genuinely wish, oh no, not to buy myself out to pay for the unpleasantness, but to quite simply do something that is to her advantage. On the grounds that, well, I haven't assumed for myself the privilege of doing her nothing but harm. If there were in my offer even the millionth part of calculation, I should not be offering a mere 10,000, but only 5 weeks ago I offered her more than that. There is in addition the possibility that even in the very, very near future I shall marry a certain young lady. And if that does indeed come to pass, then consequently, all suspicion as to my making approaches to Avdotya Romanovna must inevitably be destroyed. In conclusion, I would point out that by marrying Mr. Luzhin, Avdotya Romanovna will be taking that same money, only from another side of the family. So don't be angry, Rodion Romanovich. Think about it calmly and with composure. As he said this, Svidrigailov was the very model of calm and composure. I think you'd better stop, Raskolnikov said. What you're saying is outrageously insolent. Not in the least. If that were so, people would be able to do to one another nothing but harm in this world, and not even possess the right to a single crumb of good, merely because of some empty accepted convention. That's absurd. I mean, suppose I were to die, and left that sum to your sister in my will. Do you really think she'd refuse it then? It's highly probable. Well, I suppose that means she would, sir. Oh well, if she would, she would. So be it. Only 10,000 is not a bad thing to have. It can come in handy. No, the same. I'd be obliged if you would pass on to Avdotya Romanovna what I've said to you. No, I won't. In that case, Rodion Romanovich, I shall be compelled to try to obtain a personal interview with her myself, and may consequently upset her. And if I do pass on to her what you said, you won't try and see her in person. Is that it? I really don't know what to say to you. I'd very much like to see her just once. Don't rely on it. Pity. But then, you don't really know me, do you? Perhaps we shall come to be on closer terms with each other. You really think that's likely, do you? Why ever not? Svidrigailov said, smiling. He got up and took his hat. I mean, after all, I really didn't mean to trouble you very much by coming here. And didn't even have any particularly clear idea in my head of what I was expected to gain by it. Though I must say, the look on your face this morning did startle me somewhat. Where did you see me this morning? Raskolnikov asked uneasily. Oh, somewhere or other. I don't remember now, sir. I still keep thinking there's something about you that resembles myself. And I mean, don't worry, I'm not an utter bore. I used to get along all right with the card sharpers. Prince Svirby, who's an important fellow and a distant relative of mine, didn't find my company boring. I was able to write a few lines about Raphael's Madonna in Mrs. Prilukova's visiting album. I lived with Marfa Petrovna for 7 years quite literally without a break. I've even spent nights in the Vyazensky Down on the Haymarket. And I may go up in Berg's balloon. Very well then. May I ask if you're planning to make your journey soon? What journey? Oh, the voyage, or whatever it was you were talking about. You know what I mean. The voyage? Oh yes, quite so. I did indeed mention my voyage to you. Well, that's rather a long story. And I mean, if you only knew what it was you were asking me about. He added suddenly, and gave a short, loud burst of laughter. Actually, I may get married instead of going on my voyage. I'm in the process of finding a wife. Here? Yes. Whenever did you get the time? But even so, I would very much like to see Avdotya Romanovna just once. I do implore you most seriously. Ah, yes, I know what it was I forgot. Rodion Romanovich, please tell your sister that Marfa Petrovna has left her 3,000 rubles in her will. It's absolutely true. Marfa Petrovna made the stipulation a week before her death, and I helped her sign the particulars. Avdotya Romanovna may even receive the money in 2 or 3 weeks' time. Are you telling the truth? The truth. Convey it to her. Well, sir, your servant. Why, I reside not far from you at all. On his way out through the doorway, Svidrigailov collided with Razumikhin. Thank you so very much for listening. If you enjoyed, please like, comment, share, all that jazz. And if you really enjoyed, do subscribe because there is more to come. As I've said multiple times and will continue to say, this is a real long book. If you're listening on podcast, please leave a review as it helps get this in front of as many people as possible, and reading your reviews really makes my day. If you want to support the show further on Spotify, just listen to the show while you sleep and share it with your friends, maybe, and get them to listen to it in their sleep as well. If you don't want to listen, I don't know, while you're awake. Help me get the monetization requirements that I need on Spotify. That's all I'm saying. If you want to support the show further, there's a Ko-Fi link which is now on screen about here or in the link in the description box. It's a direct way to support the show, and it really makes my day. Once again, thank you very, very much for listening, and until next time, bye-bye.